All right, Mr. Everything here. Turns out I got a lot more study to do for my air brake, Z air brake endorsement knowledge test. Lots more to do. So this is part 2, and let's go through it. I got like 8 pages of notes. So vehicles with air brakes must have separate brake systems for normal stopping and for braking and for emergency stopping. The brake pedal is a service brake and draws air from the primary and secondary tanks to the wheels. The brake chambers are round metal containers at each wheel. There are 2 kinds of air brake chambers: the service chamber and the spring brake chamber. The service brake chambers have a flexible rubber disc or diaphragm, a push rod, and a spring. Air pressure causes the brakes to apply, and the spring returns brakes to normal off. Slack adjusters are a push rod and a lever. The air pushes out the slack adjusters to engage the shoes or pads to the drum or rotor. This is called the push rod stroke. The harder you push the brakes, the more pressure on the service brake system. As the brake pads or brake shoes wear out, the manual adjustment must be made. And these manual adjustments must be made by a trained or certified personnel only. Any truck driver can get a training and certification to adjust manual slack adjusters. But automatic slack adjusters would have to be adjusted and repaired by a proper technician. The Highway Traffic Act strictly regulates the brake chamber push rod stroke. Front wheels on a truck or large vehicle with air brakes will have limiting valves to reduce the force on the front steering axle. The push rod stroke is produced by compressed air entering the brake chamber. Spring brakes are used for parking and emergency. Spring brakes, and not spring brake, if you know what I mean. Spring brakes apply when air is removed, so air pressure keeps them from activating. A spring brake chamber includes both service brake and spring brake sections. They use a large coil spring strong enough to apply the brakes when air is removed. The spring brake chamber is piggybacked onto the service brake chamber. The service brake chamber is the one always closest to the push rod. A spring brake control valve is usually a yellow push or pull four-sided knob near the driver. Look to see if you have to push or pull to engage or disengage the spring brakes. Usually, it is push to release and pull to engage. It should say right on it, but it can be reversed. Some tractors have a separate valve that can release the tractor brakes while leaving the trailer brakes engaged. If you see a blue valve This is a trailer brake release valve. The tractor brakes, some tractors have the separate valve that can release the tractor brakes while leaving the trailer brakes engaged. And it is usually a blue knob. So let me repeat that. This valve, the blue valve, can release the tractor brakes, but leaves the trailer brakes engaged. So if the air pressure in the air brake system drops below 60 psi, an uncontrolled stop will occur if you are still driving. It is imperative that the brakes are properly adjusted for the spring brakes to work properly. Poor or incorrect brake adjustment affects all braking systems, spring and service. There is a type of brake chamber, the DD3 brake chamber. You will see 3 air lines going to it. And it's found on many coaches and buses. And the thing about this DD3 system, it does not have a large mechanical spring in the brake chamber. But all air brake systems must have a way of stopping if the service brakes fail. Usually, the emergency and parking system are combined. Spring brakes can hold the brakes in the applied position without air. The spring brakes will apply with the absence of air or the removal of air. For spring brakes to disengage, air pressure must reach 60 psi. So those springs do not disengage until the air system hits 60 psi. The spring brakes are not as strong as service brakes. Service brakes apply much more pressure on the brake system or on the shoes, where the shoes or the pads meet the rotor and the drum. You have to be careful not to drive with spring brakes applied if your vehicle moves with accelerator pedal applied. When you apply the service brakes, the slack adjusters pull out. Never drive a vehicle if the spring brakes have been caged. Caged means the springs have been manually disengaged by usually a bolt, and the purpose would be for towing the vehicle. Coaches and some buses might have the DD3 safety actuator. They have 3 airlines connected and use air for all applications. The brake pedal is pushed and held for almost 5 seconds to release the spring brake. Separate valves must be used to control the trailer brakes on the trailer or a converter dolly, which is like a trailer with a 5th wheel attachment on it. Trailers need 2 airlines to operate, one for service and one for supply or emergency. The trailers have tanks too. They have a service line tank and an emergency line tank. There are air connectors at the rear of the tractor or towing vehicle to connect to the trailer's air lines. Because remember, the compressor is on the tractor or the towing vehicle, so that air will now have to supply air to the trailer system. The connecting couplers are called glad hands and must be kept in good condition. There are dead end or dummy couplers that can be used to protect the glad hands. Usually red is the supply or emergency line, and the blue is the service line. Some vehicles may be able to cross connect those lines and they may not be color coded. You must be careful not to cross connect the glad hands to the trailer. At the rear of the trailer, the glad hands must be the same style as the towing vehicle. And I'm talking at the rear of the trailer if you're going to tow anything else behind a trailer that is already being towed. And the use of a shutoff valve must be used when present, when not in use on the trailers. Sometimes there is a hand valve to independently operate the trailer brakes only. When the hand valve and brake pedal are used at the same time, the trailer will receive higher pressure on the service line. Trailer hand valves are not for parking or emergency stops and must never be used as such. The trailer air supply valve is usually a push or pull valve near the driver, and it's usually a red 8-sided knob, usually push to open, and when no trailer is present, it should be pulled out to close. Air will escape if the trailer supply air valve is pushed in open position when no trailer is attached. The trailer air supply valve will automatically close if air loss gets dangerously low, like around 20 to 45 psi. Because the air escapes from the line when the trailer supply valve is left open, the valve would normally close well before the supply line drops to 45 to 20 psi. The air tanks will have more pressure than in the lines in this situation.